On one ordinary spring morning, a company that had spent a decade climbing woke up and lost nearly half of its entire value before lunch. Not half of one bad quarter. Half of everything. In a single trading session, roughly 48% of the company's market value simply evaporated, billions of dollars gone in the time it takes to finish a cup of coffee. There was no fraud. No scandal. No factory fire, no poison product, no criminal executive being led away in handcuffs. The building was fine. The employees showed up. The app still worked exactly as it had the day before. And that is the part that should unsettle you. This was a healthy, profitable business that millions of students relied on to get through school. It had a real product, real revenue, and a real moat that had protected it for years. And it was gutted almost overnight, not by a rival with deeper pockets, not by a hostile takeover, but by a single free tool that most people were still treating as a novelty. To understand how something this big can fall this fast, you have to understand what this empire actually was, and why the thing that killed it was the one threat nobody in the room took seriously. For most of its life, this was the kind of company that gets rich quietly. It was a subscription homework help app. The pitch was simple and almost boring. For a small monthly fee, a student stuck on a brutal physics problem or a tangled essay could get a clean, step-by-step answer, written out and explained. Not just the final number, the whole path to it. On top of that, it rented textbooks, shipping physical books to students for a fraction of the cover price and taking them back at the end of the term. Boring. Reliable. Enormously profitable. Here is why it worked. The company sat on a mountain of answers to specific questions, the exact problems assigned in real courses, solved by real people and archived, year after year. A student searching at midnight, panicking before a deadline, would find that their exact question had already been answered. That archive was the moat. It was expensive to build and expensive to copy, and it kept students paying month after month because the alternative was staring at a blank page alone at 2 a.m. The business wasn't selling knowledge, exactly. It was selling the fastest path between a stuck student and an answer. And for years, it owned that path completely. Wall Street noticed. As the world moved online and classrooms scattered into bedrooms and kitchen tables, demand for on-demand homework help exploded. Subscribers poured in by the millions. Revenue climbed. And the stock did what stocks do when a business looks like it has found a permanent, defensible niche in a growing market. It soared. At its peak, the company was worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $14 billion. Think about that number for a second. $14 billion for an app that helps you with your homework. This was not a scrappy little startup burning cash and hoping. It was a mature, cash-generating machine with a loyal base, a wide moat, and analysts writing glowing reports about its staying power. If you had described it on paper, recurring subscription revenue, a defensible content library, a captive audience that renews every semester, investors would have called it exactly the kind of steady, unsexy business you want to own for the long haul. It looked, in every conventional sense, safe. And that is the cruel irony sitting at the center of this whole story. The features that made it look safe were the exact features that made it fragile. It just took the right kind of shock to reveal it. That shock arrived late in 2022, and almost nobody recognized it as a shock at all. A free AI chatbot appeared, a general-purpose tool you could simply talk to. You typed a question in plain language, and it typed back an answer, instantly, in complete sentences, for nothing. At first it was treated as a toy. People asked it to write silly poems and fake pirate stories. Tech commentators debated whether it was a gimmick. Inside a lot of companies, executives glanced at it, shrugged, and went back to their quarterly planning. But here's the part that should unsettle you. A student didn't see a toy. A student saw something else entirely. They saw a machine that would explain a calculus problem step by step, rewrite a clumsy paragraph, and untangle a chemistry equation patiently, endlessly, and at 3 in the morning if that's when the panic hit. It did the exact thing the subscription app charged money for. Except it did it for free, it did it instantly, and it never made you dig through an archive hoping your specific question had already been asked. The moat, that expensive library of pre-answered questions, suddenly didn't matter, because you no longer needed a library of old answers. You had a machine that generated a fresh answer for any question at all. What happened next didn't make a sound. There was no announcement, no boycott, no angry campaign. Students just started drifting. One by one, then in waves, they realized they could get the same help, often better help, without paying anyone. Why pay a monthly fee to search a database of answers when a free chatbot would write you a custom answer on demand? For a while, the company's numbers still looked fine, because subscriptions don't collapse in a single day. People forget to cancel. Semesters end on their own schedule. The damage builds quietly underneath the surface, hidden inside metrics that only turn ugly a quarter or two later. This is the treacherous thing about disruption. By the time it shows up clearly in the financials, the ground has already shifted beneath you. New signups slow first. Then renewals soften. Then the growth story, the whole reason the stock was worth $14 billion, quietly stops being true. Management could feel it coming. The question hanging over every meeting was no longer how fast can we grow. It was how much of this can we possibly hold on to. And soon they would have to say that out loud, on the record, to people who owned the stock. The reckoning came on an earnings call. Leadership finally said the quiet part into a microphone: the free AI chatbot was hurting the business. New customer growth was taking a direct hit as students chose the free tool instead of subscribing. It was an honest admission, and honesty, in that moment, was financially catastrophic. Because up until then, investors had been allowed to hope. Maybe the chatbot was a fad. Maybe students would come back for the trusted, verified answers. Maybe the moat would hold. The admission killed that hope in a sentence. If the people running the company, the ones with all the internal data, were telling you the free tool was eating their growth, then there was no comforting story left to tell. And so the market did the brutal thing markets do when hope disappears. It repriced the entire company in a matter of hours. That roughly 48% single-day collapse we started with? This was the day. Billions of dollars in value erased, not because the company had lied, but because it had finally told the truth about a threat it could not outbuild, outspend, or outrun. And that day was not the bottom. It was the beginning of a slide. From its peak, the stock would go on to lose something close to 99% of its value, a near total erasure of everything shareholders had built. A company once worth $14 billion shrank to a small fraction of that, its story now told in warnings and write-downs instead of growth charts. The layoffs came, as they always do. Staff cut to match a business that was suddenly much smaller than the one everyone had planned for. Leadership started using the careful, ominous language companies reach for when the original plan has failed, exploring strategic alternatives. In plain English, that often means looking for a buyer, a merger, or some way to salvage whatever value is left before it drains away entirely. The empire wasn't destroyed in a fire. It was slowly, publicly deflated, quarter after quarter, while everyone watched. And the machine that did it never fought a war, never bought a competitor, never even knew this company existed. It just offered students a better deal for free and let the moat drain out on its own. So what's the real lesson here, beyond one company's bad year? It's this: the business was never really selling answers. It was selling arbitrage. It sat in the narrow gap between a student's question and an answer, and it charged a toll to cross that gap. For years that toll looked like a fortress. But a moat built on a narrow slice of information is only as safe as the difficulty of getting that information somewhere else. The moment a free, general-purpose tool made answers abundant, the toll bridge became a bridge to nowhere. And this is the uncomfortable pattern, because it doesn't stop at one homework app. All around us are businesses whose entire value is standing between people and something they want, collecting a fee for the privileged translation services, simple legal templates, basic tutoring, routine research, the middlemen in 100 quiet industries. Each one looks safe right up until a single free tool makes the thing they gatekeep abundant. That's how an empire worth $14 billion gets erased, not by a bigger empire, but by a free box that answers questions. So here's what I keep turning over, and I genuinely want your take in the comments. What's the narrow gap your job, or your industry, quietly charges a toll to cross, and how long until something free makes that gap disappear?